use sets of things to organize all of your belongings. So here's the thing. Most things you own have a specific purpose. Sometimes they also have not only one, but multiple purposes. But here is now the big idea. What if you organize them in a way where you don't need to actually think about each individual item? So you don't need to think about your notebook charger, your mouse, your backpack, your iPhone charger, your iPhone cable, charging cable, your phone's battery case, your phone's other case, your phone's water housing. I mean, it's very nice to think about all of these things, but it also requires unnecessary brain power. And brain power is something that's very limited, and therefore it doesn't really make sense to waste it. Therefore, it makes sense to just divide all the things you have into units. And these units are things you either take or don't take. So if you take your phone with you, for example, you just take your phone with you. If you take then the phone's charging set with you, then you don't think about like, do I have one individual cable and this cable, and should I use this adapter? But you just put all of these things together, maybe into one bag, and organize them as charging cables for phones or charging cables for everything. And then what happens is that basically the packing list is reduced to the bigger item, the bigger bucket, because then you only need to put, for example, bag with charging cables onto your list. And the thing is, it's very necessary not to then go into the bag of the charging cables and to just randomly take out one. But the thing that makes all of this possible is that you don't have to think about all the individual items, but instead you have to only think about this one big item. And this just reduces the number of items you have to think about. It reduces basically all the stress that is there with packing. This could mean, for example, so putting this into practice, this principle into practice. So the charging cables are actually something I use. I have, for example, when it comes to setting up a desk, I have two basically toiletry bags. They are black, therefore nobody cares, I guess. Also, I don't care. The one is with audio cables and the other one is with charging cables. So these are the ones that go onto my desk setup. And if I then move, I just take these two and I set it up at the new place, and then just it's there. But I don't have the main charger in there, because the main charger is something that goes with me whenever I'm like, whenever I have, for example, the medium stuff with me. Medium stuff, it's not a very good phrase for it. So basically think of it as this. There are 3 different item collections you can take with you. You can basically also take none of the item collections with you. Basically, maybe, so, I mean, the base set where you don't take anything with you would basically be that you have your portemonnaie, so your portemonnaie, I guess that's the right word, and then also your phone these days. I guess nobody goes somewhere apart from sport without these items. Maybe without a phone, but this is basically the base set. Then the next set is a rucksack. What is in a rucksack? So in my rucksack, for example, there is, I just have it here, there is a basic hygiene set. Then there is also just a place for all the things I would otherwise store in my pockets, for example. So my portemonnaie goes into the rucksack. My phone is still in the pocket. But if I take the rucksack with me, then I usually have a battery bank in the rucksack. So this means if I now go somewhere and I take the rucksack with me, I don't have to think about the battery bank, because the battery bank is always in there and is also charged. If I then, on another day, I mean, this is a system that relies on you actually doing all the other things connected to the system. So if you then, for example, come home and you leave the battery bank within the rucksack without charging it, but having used it, then obviously the system is rigged. Therefore, you have to make sure that everything is always in place. Mise en place, basically. A principle, I guess French cooks came up with. So this means that my rucksack is always packed as it should be. This means that my phone ideally would always be charged, but when it comes to the phone and being charged, this is obviously a problem of its own. So when it comes to the rucksack, again, I have a case for my notebook. And where is the natural place? So kind of the place I gave it to for this notebook case, for this notebook cover, it's just in this backpack. And therefore I just don't put it anywhere else, apart from sometimes into the desk. But this means that I now take the bag with me. I could potentially put the notebook in the bag with me. But if I take the bag and don't take the notebook with me, this also means that I have unnecessary stuff, being the notebook case in my rucksack, which is something that is a bummer, I guess, because sometimes you just take things with you don't need. But this also means that you just, these are the two extremes. You can either take too much stuff with you or too little stuff. And on which side would you rather be? I guess a little bit too much stuff is better than a little bit too little stuff. Because if you, for example, go somewhere and you don't have an additional jacket and you freeze and you then die, then that's not very useful. But if instead you sweat a little bit, that's using the same example, I guess. Also, I just used different margins, I guess. So I said like you die, which is like a huge margin, a huge extreme, so a huge jump on the scale, on temperature. And the other one was just a little, so therefore, just explaining how I used rhetorics to actually make this example something that is representable and that justifies my arguments. But nevertheless, so level 1 is basically me with the rucksack. I take me with me most of the time. Sometimes I forget myself, but here we have the rucksack, level 1. Level 2 is the rucksack and an additional backpack. It's basically a very big, it's a rucksack and an additional travel bag. Basically, it's a very big bag and it's just my suitcase, I guess. And it's not a case for a suit, even though it's a suitcase. I don't usually keep my suit in it, but I actually have to check the navigation maybe. Yeah, I'm still on the right way, I guess. So level 2 is then additional clothes, for example. You could also already store additional clothes in the backpack. So the backpack being the rucksack, level 1. So what I keep usually in the rucksack, for example, is a rain jacket, because a rain jacket is something that's very small and it's not like a big jacket that is like this big, but it's just a rain jacket. Therefore you can actually compress it down to a size like this. I also thought about in the past about, I think I still have it in there, so just one additional short pant, just in order to sleep at hostels, for example, or just to go for a run if you don't have a pant with you. So shorts with you for a run, then you can always do sport if you have like this in there. Then in these times, obviously masks, then just items like these. These are also things obviously everybody uses. Like everybody uses like pockets and rucksacks in order to store things and leave them in there. But obviously I'm just doing the same thing. I just wanted to make a video exploring the principle behind it, the idea behind it. Because what this allows you now to do is to just not think about all the items that are in the rucksack, because the items just are in the rucksack and you know what items are in the rucksack, and therefore you don't have to pack the rucksack even. You kind of have to pack it, but you don't need a packing list because you know what things are in the rucksack. The same is true with a car, for example. It doesn't make sense to provide the car with all the things that are basically reusable. For example, like things like these. It doesn't make really sense to just get them and take them and put them into the apartment, because why would you put them in the apartment when the only using scenario is in the car? And the same is true for so many other things. Like, would you need your notebook charger anywhere else apart from your notebook? These days maybe, because you can also charge your phone with a notebook charger often. But yeah, well, then I have basically the additional pack, and then I basically have the rest of my stuff, which is then the set I have at home. So these are basically the 3 different levels of stuff with me. So for example, in the level 3 set, then I have an external monitor, because it allows me to work better. So with each set of items, you have like an improvement in convenience and then also efficiency in many different things. And also, obviously, you can do more things if you have more of the things you actually need to do things. And the more you limit the items in your life, the more you probably, at least if these are kind of necessary items, the more you are constrained by weight and also by volume, the more you just cannot do things you only could do with more items. For example, you cannot really surf if you don't have a surfboard with you, and you don't surf at a lake where you can actually rent surfboards. So therefore, if you don't have a surfboard in level 0 or level 1, then I mean, yeah, you can just not surf, I guess.